Welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. Less than 24 hours ago, a horrifying mass shooting took place in Christchurch, New Zealand. A gunman stormed into two separate mosques and murdered at least 49 people. The killer's name apparently is Brendan Tarrant. In a dreadful modern twist, Tarrant live-streamed his attacks on Facebook as they happened. 3 other people have been arrested as well, though it's still unclear tonight if they were connected to the attack. The attack is awful, and not just because nearly 50 people were murdered. The killer appears to have been motivated by ideology. All violence is bad, but political violence is the worst kind because it's the most divisive. Over time, political violence tears countries apart. Tarrant left behind a 74-page manifesto in which he explains his motives in detail. Apparently, nobody in the American news media has read any of it. All day, you've heard left-wing commentators and politicians working hard to tie Tarrant to conservatives in the United States. That is absurd. Tarrant was no conservative. As he wrote in his manifesto, quote, "Conservatism is corporatism in disguise. I want no part of it. The nation with the closest political and social values to my own is the People's Republic of China," end quote. Well, that's not a sentiment you hear from many conservatives. Tarrant's views are not derived from American politics. The murders he committed have nothing to do with anyone in the United States. But that doesn't mean his rampage won't be used to change this country. It has happened before. Political terrorism always makes countries less free. In the panic after the 9/11 attacks, we impulsively gave away our right to privacy. We awarded the federal government the power to spy on our citizens without their knowledge for virtually any reason. That was a grave mistake. Authoritarian forces within our country would like to seize this moment for similar ends. Within hours of the Christchurch shooting, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez blamed the National Rifle Association somehow for the attack. The NRA doesn't even exist in New Zealand. That's a country with far stricter gun laws than in the United States. Ocasio-Cortez doesn't care. Maybe she doesn't even know. What she does know is that the NRA is the single most effective guardian of the Second Amendment. The left would like to invalidate that amendment, along with other parts of the Bill of Rights that are in their way. Even as you sleep, they're working to do this. Democrats have already used the Russia hoax to undermine gun rights. Newly released congressional transcripts show that Glenn Simpson of Fusion GPS fed false information about the NRA to Bruce Orr at the DOJ, who passed it on to federal investigators. Simpson's lies helped launch a federal investigation into the NRA, and that, of course, was always the goal of it. In Connecticut, the gun manufacturer Remington is battling a lawsuit that holds them responsible for the Sandy Hook shooting. What did Remington do? What it always does: sell completely legal firearms. The lawsuit's premise is absurd, but legal coherence isn't the point of the exercise. The point is to shut down gun companies, making the Second Amendment irrelevant. The tragedy was just a pretext to increase the power of a few over the many. That's always the way it works. Already tonight, you're hearing calls in this country for curbs on free speech in response to the New Zealand massacre. Jeff Bezos' newspaper wasted no time in blaming the entire thing on the free flow of ideas that are, quote, spreading hate. For the censorship class, more control is always the solution. Ban more people, squelch more ideas, go deplatform someone. A writer at the Chicago Tribune almost immediately blamed Fox News for what happened in Christchurch. You can see what's coming. It's already happening. But it won't work. Censorship does not make us safer. Instead, it drives forbidden ideas underground where they fester and explode. If you really wanted to stop horrifying acts of violence like the one we just saw in New Zealand, like the ones we've seen repeatedly over the past 5 or 6 years, you would take an honest look at what the West has become. It is a place where the church has died, a place where a foolish ruling class calls itself God, a place where the people wither. Its hallmarks are fatherlessness, addiction, mental illness, evaporating social trust, and the widespread nihilism you would expect as a result of all of that. This is the society that our ruling class built. Talking about why it doesn't work is a threat to their power, so they shut down that conversation. But enforced silence doesn't help. It just divides us more. Dividing us was the point of yesterday's massacre in Christchurch, literally. Tarrant said so in his manifesto, quote, "I chose firearms for the effect it would have on social discourse and the effect it could have on the politics of the United States. With enough pressure, the left wing within the United States will seek to abolish the Second Amendment, and the right wing within the U.S. will see this as an attack on their very freedom and liberty. This will result in a dramatic polarization of the people in the United States and eventually a fracturing of the U.S. along cultural and racial lines, end quote. So that was the killer's dream, ripping apart America, destroying it from within. Brendan Tarrant is in prison tonight. He has no power to hurt us anymore. We can only hurt ourselves. Let's hope we don't. Colleen Noir is a host at NRA TV, and he joins us tonight. Colleen, thanks very much for coming on. Are you struck by how little time it takes for people in politics and the media to use a tragedy like the one that happened yesterday in Christchurch, New Zealand, to affect a political outcome in this country?
No, not at all. Largely because, growing up in life, I've always known that whenever there's an issue, one side is going to attack another side. And for me, the way I look at it is whoever they're attacking the most, that's who they consider the biggest threat. And right now, when it comes to discussions of freedom, the Second Amendment, what have you, the biggest threat to them is the NRA. And that's why they're doing to the NRA, NRA TV, and its members the same thing that they're doing to you. They're trying to silence you. And so nothing that they do up until this point now really surprises me, because with the free flow of information, there's almost no point in hiding the agenda anymore. They just kind of put it out there for the world to see and attack anybody that disagrees with it.
But to say that the NRA is responsible for a mass shooting in New Zealand where the NRA doesn't operate, in a country that has very strict gun laws, I mean, to say something like that out loud, do you expect that people will believe you, or are you just going through the motions of repeating your talking points?
Well, most of them are talking to their own echo chamber. And so, for instance, if you look at the way the discourse is handled online, right, I've been blocked by a number of these individuals that I've tried to have regular conversations with about the issue. And the reason they block me is so that my people don't see the conversation and then bring up their points, and then the people on their side don't see the points that we're making, so that we can have an open and honest discourse. They just want to spit all the rhetoric to their echo chamber. So a lot of those people are going to believe it because they don't know anything other than what they see on their side of the issue.
Right. No, that's a very smart point. So sometimes I watch the news and I get very concerned that the authoritarian elements in the Democratic Party are taking over, and it really is a threat to all of us, I think. And then I see moments like this. I want to play something for you. We just got this.
Okay.
This is a progressive activist screaming at Chelsea Clinton and blaming her for the shooting at the mosques in Christchurch because Chelsea Clinton dared criticize Congresswoman Omar over AIPAC. I know it's complex, but watch this.
Okay.
After all that you have done and all the Islamophobia that you have sowed.
I'm so sorry. Well, certainly it was never my intention. I do believe words matter. I believe we have to show
They do matter. And this right here is the result of a massacre stoked by people like you and the words that you put out into the world. And I want you to know that, and I want you to feel that deep inside. 49 people died because of the rhetoric that you put out there.
I'm so sorry.
I don't think...
What does "I'm sorry you feel that way" mean? What does that mean?
Chelsea Clinton, of course, cravenly apologized because that's what you have to do. But why is it that when a crazy person kills innocents, other people have to blame bystanders? I mean, Chelsea Clinton, whatever her many failings, and I've criticized Chelsea Clinton many times, she did not shoot anybody in Christchurch, New Zealand. Why can't people blame the guy who did it?
Because that's the state of our country right now. What we've done is we've taken the idea of personal accountability and responsibility and pretty much shoved it out of the window. And so now anytime something happens, we position a lot of people in this generation to just look to somebody else and blame them for somebody else's actions. It's a weird kind of mentality that has developed over the last couple decades. And I'm starting to notice it more and more. When I see something like that, I'm going to blame the guy. I'm going to have my vitriol, save all of my vitriol for the person who actually committed the crime. And I'm not going to look to someone else and scapegoat that responsibility onto someone else, or even worse, an inanimate object like a firearm, which tends to happen even on a more regular basis.
That's exactly right. It's like blaming a hammer when your house falls down. Colleen Noir, thank you. It's great to see you. It's really interesting.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on again. Absolutely.